she told you, you need to learn how to be with God. And that really stuck with me.
If your life is ever going to mean anything and have purpose, you have to come to peace with God.
We're changing psychologically, emotionally, physically from this pace. But we have an invitation from God, be still and know that He's God.
It's not transactional, it's relational. And that saved me.
Welcome to the Seeds for Your Marriage podcast. We're Trisha and Thomas.
And in this episode, we interview Mark and Shell Cowper-Smith, authors of Up Close and Personal, Being with God. We dive into contemplative prayer and the art of stillness as a couple. And even though this podcast was recorded nearly a year ago, its wisdom is timeless.
And we invite you to stay tuned for our upcoming season, bringing you more biblical wisdom, practical strategies designed to help you communicate better, connect deeply, and grow stronger together in every season of your marriage.
Enjoy today's podcast. Hello, welcome to Seeds for Your Marriage. We are joined today by Mark and Shell Cowper-Smith. My first question is, Mark, early in the book, you talked about Sister Nora, and she told you, you need to learn how to be with God. And that really stuck with me. And can you share more about that and just the difference between knowing God and being with God?
Yeah, I love that you use those words, knowing and being, because knowing about God is not the same as being with God. Thoughts about God are not the same as experience of God. And my interaction with Sister Nora was running into a person that when she talked about the Lord, you could tell she's on a first name basis with him. And I said that to her. I said, listening to you talk about Jesus, you're on a first name basis with him. How do you know him like that? And she said, you have to learn to pray. And of course, that's not going to work. I hate prayer. I hated prayer. I tried it every day. I did my prayers. I interceded for the missionaries and all that kind of stuff. And it was work. It was another Christian work. And I told that to her and she said, oh, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that kind of prayer. I'm talking about learning how to be with God and experience Him. And I said, are you telling me that there's something I can do, and when I finish doing it, I'll know God like you know God? I'll know Jesus like you know Jesus? She said, yes. And I said, I can't believe that. She said, well, you'd have to try it. And I said, what's that going to look like? And she said, well, you're going to meet with me for an hour or 2 hours once a week for a year or two. And I'm going to teach you and train you how to be with God. And I thought, well, it's crazy, but I can see in her something I don't have that I want. So we started, and I'll tell you, it was the most difficult thing I've ever done. Because, as she explained it, the route to God is through stillness. And stillness, of course, isn't just physical stillness. It's physical stillness. It's stilling your mind and your thoughts. It's stilling your emotions and your spirit and beginning to become aware of the presence of God. And it's a hard process. It's not easy. And we negotiated. I said, I was a young lawyer. I was a go-getter. I was an extreme introvert and driven kind of success person. I'd never been still in my life. Even sitting, my hand would be moving or my foot would be moving. Stillness was anathema to me. And I said, how long do I have to do this for? This stillness thing you're talking about, this prayer thing, how long do I have to do it for? And she said, an hour. I laughed. I said, that's impossible. I can't do that. So I tried to trick her. I was a good negotiator. I said, well, how about 20 minutes? No. Well, how about 30 minutes? No. How about 45 minutes? I know my bottom line, 45 minutes. No. Does it have to be an hour? Yes. So that was the beginning of the process. And it was hard, but it worked. I remember this day, I was so frustrated with her for making me try to be still for an hour. And it wasn't going that well. And she said, how was your prayer this week? And I said, well, on Tuesday, it took me 57 minutes to come into the presence of God. 57 minutes to come into the presence of God. And she leaned forward in her chair and she said, wait a minute. You came into the presence of God? I said, yeah, right. And she said, how long did that last? And I said, 3 minutes or so, 3 or 4 minutes. She said, you were in the presence of God for 3 or 4 minutes? I said, yeah. She said, what was it like? I said, it was incredible. It was just like this peace and this joy. And she started to clap. And she said, you were in the presence of God for 3 or 4 minutes. And it dawned on me, yeah, I was. And she said, the length of time is not the critical thing. What God does to you and with you in that 3 or 4 minutes is the critical thing. And now you're learning to discern and experience the presence of God. This was the breakthrough she had been praying for. But it came as a result of having to pursue a kind of stillness that was completely unknown to me.
That's so good. Well, I want to introduce you all. This is Mark. We're interviewing Mark and Shell Cowper-Smith, like Thomas said, and they are such an amazing couple that we've just actually recently have started to get to know, and it's really, really incredible how it even came about, even meeting them. We ended up just one morning waking up, and it was Sunday morning, and God told us to go to this particular church, and we don't normally go there very often, and to this one church, we're not members, and so we were there, and they were speaking. Mark was speaking, but it really resonated with us. And Shell afterwards was outside in the little foyer area, and they have some books that Mark has written and devotional that we'll be talking about that they've both written. And it just something stuck with me and about the titles, Up Close and Personal, Relational Prayer, Being with God. And she said, I'd love to just meet with you and go over this devotional with you. And it was like through those meetings with her of just going through those chapters, I just felt like there was a kindred spirit there. Like, I just feel like this is very unique and just such a heart and a passion for God and to help people. Just a wonderful couple. We're so happy and privileged to have you on to our podcast. So welcome to the show, and just share a little bit about yourself, and then we can, dive right in.
Trisha, it's an honor to get to know you both. And I must say that I enjoy your material, your podcast, your website, your devotionals. It's been really, really food for me. So thank you very much, and your generous time too. I came into the faith after I was 18, after graduation, because I was really searching. I was really, really hurting. I'd made some bad decisions as a youth, and someone told me that God would be a father to the fatherless, and it was everything I was looking for. I did not gel with the church as well as as the first connection, because I took all my survival skills, all my working to be accepted, call it manipulation, really. I took that all into my relationships horizontally. And I worked like crazy, went to Bible college, did mission work, taught everything, and I burned out. I worked with kids from human resources and corrections, because I just had such a passion to help kids, but I burned out. That initial meeting with God wasn't transferred into how I was walking with him, because I was looking to the church to tell me what to do. And so I was finding all the to-do lists. Believe me, there's a good long Christian to-do list, isn't there? So I stumbled into Mark's church about 10 years after coming to know the Lord. And honestly, it was like my first encounter with God. Those people there were so in love with God. They weren't worried about being perfect or getting it right. It was a party. That church was a party, and real, and there were tears. And so I stuck it out there and tried all my little, here I am, I can help, so I can belong. And nobody really nobody really wanted that. They wanted me. And I had never encountered that in my life. And Mark started teaching through the material that we wrote in the devotional. I realized I had never learned to be. So this material changed me, wrecked me, broke me. And I'm extremely thankful.
Shelley's story is hinged on the fact that she was adopted and always had a sense of abandonment and that if I'm going to belong, if I'm going to have worth, I'm going to have to work for it. So her rejection and abandonment issues played perfectly into a legalistic Christian faith. God, you'll get more of God's love if you do more for him. It's a transactional relationship. It's not a parent-child relationship. So she lived by that transactional paradigm until she couldn't do it anymore. Until, you know, if you're on the treadmill and it keeps running faster and the inclination goes up, eventually you've got to jump off because you can't do it. Her jumping off was made possible by the result of coming to our church, which was an extremely grace-centered church. Even before the experience with Sister Nora, we were a church that believed that we are children of God, not just servants of God. And our identity is in that relationship with him, not in anything that we do for him. So I think that set her free because she encountered a paradigm which was completely opposed to the entire version of Christianity that she was attempting to live. I was raised in an extremely legalistic evangelical church. We're talking the 1950s. You can just imagine what the church was like in the 1950s. And it was entirely works-related and shame-based. And I was a very inquisitive, intelligent kid. And I asked too many questions in Sunday school. And they came to my father and said, please don't bring your kid to church anymore. We can't handle him. He asks questions that are too difficult to answer, and it's disruptive. So I experienced this rejection of the church at a very early age and the hypocrisy of it all, talking about love but rarely doing it. And so I hated the church. Like I quit the church as soon as I could, as I could as a teenager. I said, I'm never going there again. And I hated Christians. Honestly, guys, hated Christians. I took opportunities wherever possible to get into discussions with Christians to humiliate them and tear them apart. And that went on for many years. I was a lawyer and I was quite successful. And I had all my definitions of success. And I accomplished all of them very quickly and was empty. And what I viewed was a perfect life was a perfect life, and it was perfectly empty of meaning or purpose. And I began to have a crisis of meaning and purpose. And it got worse and worse to where I would go to work in the morning. I worked very hard. You know, lawyers, at least back in the day, we put in 14-hour days every day of the week. And I would come home tired and wonder why I did what I did today. And then I'd get up in the morning and wonder why I was going to go and do what I did. And it just got emptier and emptier. And then I remembered something my grandmother said when I was 16. I was a hippie. I was rebellious, all of that. And she was the most godly person I've ever known. And she invited me into her room and sat me down. And she said, you know, Mark, if your life is ever going to mean anything and have purpose, you have to come to peace with God. And she said, I'm going to pray for you every day. And she did. She prayed for me every day that God would get a hold of me. At the age of 28, I couldn't take it anymore. And I remembered what she said. So I decided, this is a great story. This is a really cool story. It's worth the waste of time, believe me. I decided I have to look into this God thing. I just have to, because I've tried everything else and nothing's worked. But I hated the church and I hated Christians. So how am I going to pursue God when I hate the church and I hate Christians? I heard about this Bible study that was happening at somebody's house, and it wasn't related with any church. It was just a bunch of Christians my age getting together. So I decided this will be safe. This is I don't, I hate them, but at least it's not a church. So I started going to it. I was incredibly arrogant and incredibly proud. And I knew all this Bible because I grew up with it. So they would make comments about the Bible and I would correct them. And I would tell them, you don't know what you're talking about. And I was just pedantic and I was superior. I thought I'll annoy them as much as I can. So I took a bottle of Grand Marnier liqueur to drink throughout the study. And I took my pipe to smoke. So I blew smoke in their face. I drank throughout the study. And then every second sentence had the F word in it. I mean, I was an insufferable, complete, utter jerk. And unbeknownst to me, the two guys that started the studies, their wives came to them and said, if that guy is going to keep coming, we're not coming. We're done with him. We won't come to our Bible study if that guy's going to keep coming. You have to get rid of him. I don't know what provoked these two guys, but they told their wives, we're not going to get rid of him. We're going to tolerate him and we're going to love him because God loves him. And you're not going to stop coming even though he's there. I didn't even know about this. So I kept coming, being just the biggest jerk I could possibly be. And it struck me after a few months that they weren't listening to me. They weren't paying attention to me. And my pride was deeply offended because I know so much and I'm so smart and blah, blah, blah. They're not giving me the respect that I deserve. And I thought, how can I get them to respect me? And Trish, this thought came perfectly clearly like this. The thought said, well, if they thought you loved them, they would pay attention to you. And I thought, because I'm a manipulative lawyer, right? I thought, okay, how can I make them think that I love them? And I said, how can I make them think that I love them? And the thought said, well, if you didn't drink throughout the whole study, and if you didn't blow smoke in their face, and if you didn't correct them, and if you didn't have to have the last word in absolutely everything, and if every sentence didn't have the F word in it, they would, and if you listened to them and tried to add something at the end of the evening that would be of value to their lives, they would think that you love them. And I thought, I'll do it. I'll trick them into thinking that I love them. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Controlling myself, not dominating every conversation, not ending everything with my opinion, not correcting them on their understanding the Bible. It was like having a rag stuffed into my mouth and just biting it for the whole time. But I decided I would do it. So I did that. I changed my behavior. About 6 months later, I was driving to the study. I can remember seeing my hands. I could still see my hands on the steering wheel of my car. And I was driving towards the house. This revelation popped inside of me. I love these people. I really love these people. So parked the car, ran into the house, said, guys, the most amazing thing. You're not going to believe this. This is incredible. They said what I said, I love you. They looked at me like I was out of my mind and they said, well, we love you too. I said, no, you don't understand. I really honestly love you. And they said, we love you too. I became their pastor and we planted a church because the group kept growing. And that was the beginning of this wonderful, wild ride. So that's how I came back to the Lord.
That's incredible.
That is incredible.
And your experience with that nun
Yeah.
was, how old were you at that time?
I think, it's funny you should ask that because I've been trying to figure out the year. I'm terrible with years. Like some people know the year they first saw Star Wars. I have no clue. I thought it was 3 weeks ago. Okay, so I came back to the Lord in that Bible study at 28, and I think ended up meeting Sister Nora in about 4 or 5 years later. So I'd say
Okay.
33 or 30, 32 or 33, something like that.
Mhm.
That's when that started. And that was a
Yeah.
revolution. I mean, that was because by this time, Trish, I had hit the point after 28 to 33. I was a lawyer. I was running this burgeoning church on the side. I was working for God as an employee of Cosmic Enterprises Inc. And I was in the mail room, and God was on the 36th floor executive level. So I was working for God, and that was not working. I was getting more and more tired. It's a treadmill. I'm doing my best. He's given me a sense of purpose. I know theoretically that he loves me, although I don't experience it, but that's okay because I'm in the mailroom anyway. So what difference does it make? I'll just work my way up through the organization till I can get into the boardroom with Jesus. But it never happened. And I just got more and more tired. So running into Sister Nora was the perfect opportune time to redirect my faith to a relationship rather than a performance.
Yeah.
It's not about the works. It's not transactional. It's relational. And that saved me because I was heading for burnout. And the thing about burnout is the quickest solution to burnout is don't do anything. And the part of you that wants to earn its salvation goes crazy and freaks out. But the part of you that's hungry just to be with God is fed.
Well, and I love what you said about Sister Nora, her reply. Like, you are the ultimate negotiator. You're an attorney. And you were like, what about 30 minutes? Can I just do it 30 minutes? No. And she would not give in.
No, she would not
And
give in.
she said it has to be 60 minutes. But it made me think of that story of Jesus when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane with some of his disciples, and he was praying and sweating blood, and he was just like, and they were asleep. And he's like, can't you just pray with me for 1 hour?
She used that on me. She did. During the negotiation, I said, why does it have to be an hour? And she said, well, there is a biblical precedent for that. He said, well, what do you, well, gee, and she hit me with the story, and I thought, I'm busted. Okay. If that's the condition, I'm going to do my best.
The other thing I want to pull out of that story is what I love about Sister Nora, and is that you came in complaining about how long it took you to get into the presence, but she focused on the fact that you were in the presence. And there's something there about how we see things and what we choose to give our attention to. And she celebrated as opposed to what took you so long.
Yeah, Thomas, that's brilliant because works righteousness would have said the 57 minutes is what's important. The 3 minutes was the icing on the cake, but you did the work. You did what you're supposed to do. She's celebrating the 3 minutes, not the 57 minutes of effort. And that redefines, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Am I doing this to earn my, look how hard I'm working to get into the presence of God. Oh, what a saint I am. Which is nothing but pride and works righteousness again.
Yeah.
But celebrating the presence.
She gave Mark, steps. We needed like a scaffolding, or we need something. And so being with God isn't like a how-to step thing, but to have some form that you can follow. But the first part of the workbook, I think, is so crucial because it's actually challenging the mindset before you even start. There's a chapter called The 5 Ps of Prayer, which gives you kind of some structure to wiggle around with. But it's really the beginning of what you've been talking about, moving from a worker to a child. And I think for me, that was my journey, was I could do the disciplines of the prayer, no problem. I could spend an hour, no problem. But the mindset was not there for me. And that's what is so beautiful. My way in was a lot through physical pain, actually. Just what Mark was saying about burnout. I was not able to do this stuff anymore. But because I was learning I was his child, one time I curled up in an electric blanket and I felt like he was holding me. And that was me able to shift my mindset from the doing to just being held is absolutely beautiful. But I like that. So I'm so passionate about the workbook because it gives you the shift of mindset and the practical things.
I'm guessing you're like, what, 40, 48 now? Is that about right?
Thomas, you are such a liar. I'm 73 years old.
No way.
I'm 73 years old, going
Wow.
on 74. And I've been doing this kind of prayer since I was 33, call it. It's been a long, long road.
So can you do something, the art of stillness and contemplative prayer, just, what is it? And maybe a brief compare contrast in a way to maybe what the traditional prayer life might look like relative to what you're talking about here.
I think when we think of abiding prayer, contemplative prayer, relational prayer, call it what you want, we are focusing on a kind of prayer which has no material goals. Like, for instance, petitionary prayer. We come to God and we say, I need you to do something for me. It's really important. And he's not against that. He responds to the prayers of his children. He really does. He's a good father. When we come with intercessory prayers, we're coming on behalf of another. Change this nation. Help my friend, my neighbor. Be real to them. Reveal yourself. So there's various forms of prayer. They're trying to accomplish something in the world. Abiding prayer, relational prayer, contemplative prayer doesn't seek for any particular result other than an encounter. Its value is in just simply being together. Killing time. I was tempted to call this book Killing Time with the Creator, because you're not going to get anything material out of this. You're not going to change someone's circumstances, except you're going to change you. And you're going to work on a relationship, which then is going to change how you live, how you respond to things. I came up, that very same church that you met us in, they are a very intercessory church. They're spiritual warriors. And we've been dealing with those guys, working with those guys for a long time. And they said, the next time you come, you have to lead our intercessory prayer meeting. And I said, oh, that's a disaster. I don't like intercessory prayer. I do it I have a half an hour a day of intercessory prayer for people, but it's the hardest thing I do all day. I'm not a spiritual warrior. I'm not good at rebuking the devil. I don't get excited. You do not want me to lead. I said, you don't understand. You don't want me to lead your intercessory prayer group. I will destroy it. I will ruin people's faith. This isn't going to work. And I'm trying to come up with a way out of it. And I said to the Lord, what am I going to tell these people? I mean, I'm not into this. I'm not one of those earth-changing, warriors. And he said, tell them not to pray for peace, but to pray from peace. He said, I don't send people out to do battle, to be warriors, until they're first men and women of peace. If they know how to live in peace, then I'll send them out to make spiritual warfare. But be a person of peace before you can be a person of war. And he said, pray from peace, not for peace. I thought, I can explain that. So into the meeting, I said, guys, this is going to sound weird, but rather than going into spiritual warfare and intercession and petition, how about we seek his presence and we experience his peace? And once we know his peace is in the room, once we know he's manifest his presence, then let's ask him what to make war for and simply pray for the things he gives us in that warrior spirit. But we have to find the peace first. Yeah. And we did. And thank God he backed it up. I mean, his presence came and everybody said, wow, we never experienced anything like that. And that is a mindset of the quality of your behavior is going to be determined by the level of influence that God has in your soul, in your mind, in your will. So to lead a good life, we can go out with human intention and good intentions and self-discipline. And we can accomplish a bunch of things that look good. But if we make contact with him first, and we had intimacy with him first, then that change in us, that presence within us is going to leak throughout the day. I think of us as a bucket that you drilled a bunch of holes in, and you had filled it with from the hose, and then you went up to water the plants, and you just moved the bucket back and forth, and the water all leaked out until it's empty. Well, if we become filled with his presence in the early day, and we go out and live our life, intentionally or unintentionally, we are going to leak him to others. We're going to leak his presence. We're going to leak his peace. We're going to leak his joy. We're going to leak all those things that we received in the morning are going to leak out throughout the day. And at the end of the day, we'll be empty. But that's okay. We're going to have a sleep, and then we're going to get up in the morning and we're going to fill the tank again.
If I might just also add, this style of prayer, yeah, it puts your soul at rest. So it brings our relationship to a whole new level. When we come as people of peace, some of the things you teach in your podcast about, being able to voice your wants and your needs. Well, when I come in that state of peace, much better communication. And the other thing I'd like to add, I came into a greater understanding of the being prayer just through our relationship, because I initially married Mark because I thought I could be a great helpmate. I played the piano, I did accounting, I love administration. He was a disaster in administration, and I thought I would really fill a need, and then I had a health crisis. And I also started realizing every time I was interacting with Mark, I was wanting to do something for him. Can I get you this? Can I do this? Can I do? And our relationship was only going to a certain level. And I knew that Mark didn't really want that. He said, I really don't want to be cared for by a nursemaid, and so here, my spiritual language, my love language was doing acts of service. He was wanting me to be with him. His love language was shared experiences. I had never really thought about that. And then when we started doing that, I thought, this is what God wants. He just wants me to be. And so that was also helping coming to understanding what stillness means. Not just not doing things, but coming into a place of peace and just being there. So that's helped me.
Yeah, and I think in this day and age, right? If I think about the speed at which life is going, and I mean, we're multi-connected, got 18 devices, it texts in the car, it's your phone rang, Mark, 50 years ago, you wouldn't have had a cell phone, and we wouldn't even be doing this right now 50 years ago over the internet. But just the idea of all of life's pace and the speed at which we have to make decisions, et cetera, it's almost counter to the idea of slowing down, right?
Absolutely.
And just resting.
No, everything in the world is designed to distract us from stillness. Here's a really interesting fact, you guys. 1960, in the early 1960s, a naturalist went out, and his goal was to record on tape 1 hour of sound with no human source within it. No human sound, just nature. And so a plane going overhead would ruin the hour. So how many hours in the 1960s did it take him of recording to get 1 hour of uninterrupted natural sound? It took him 24 hours. He went out about 10 years ago to do it again, just 1 hour of uninterrupted natural sound. How many hours of taping did it take him to get that one? Over 2,000. So we're living in a world that isn't just becoming
input.
Yeah, it's not just noise. Noise is merely symbolic of something else. It's a way of measuring activity. We are moving so fast that my personal opinion, because I grew up in the 1950s and I practiced law in the 1970s and the 1980s. And to close a deal, we didn't have any instant communication. We had telephones, but that's verbal. To close a business deal, you had to do documents. And documents had to be printed and on a typewriter, not on a computer.
Carbon.
And then they had to be put in the mail, and the mailman had to take them. And it took a week to 2 weeks, depending upon where in the country your deal was being closed in. And then you had to wait for a response. And then the response came back, and then you had to do it again. A business deal could take months to do, just going back and forth. It was a slow pace. You had time to think about what you were doing and saying and what your goal was between events. You could reflect. That is gone. I mean, we have DocuSign now. You don't even have to sign a piece of paper. You can do it all immediately. And therefore, the number of critical decisions we make in a day today compared to even 50 years ago, there's no comparison whatsoever. So I'm asking myself, what does that speed of decision-making demand of us? And what effect does it have? And how designed are our minds and bodies to deal with that pace? Like, human history's lasted a very long time. This ridiculous speed is a nanosecond compared to human history right up till today. What is this doing to us as humans? And what can we do about it? Is there any antidote to this? Because cortisol is produced by stress. And stress comes from having to make quick decisions that matter. And how do we cope as humans with this? And this isn't a Christian issue.
Right.
We have a Christian solution. This is a human issue of our times in Western culture.
Yeah.
So I think when we bring people a means of being still and slowing down and becoming contemplative about their lives, whether they believe in the Lord or not, I wish they did. But even if they didn't and they practiced this, they would find they would find health benefits to it and emotional benefits, mental benefits to it.
And how this bleeds into our relationships is incredible. The breakdown of family is unbelievable. And so, again, when we can have this stillness time of prayer and setting our hearts at peace, we start slowing down and our relationships are much richer and there's less repair that has to get done. So it's such a valuable habit. I remember after practicing for a while, I would stop in the middle of the day. I felt the Lord showed me to stop in the middle of the day and take 30 minutes, my most productive time of the day. Take 30 minutes and just lie on the floor. Don't pray, don't do anything. It was like a detox. It was so hard because my physical health wasn't great and I only had so much productivity. So to just do that, but I really felt he said that. A couple months into it, I started craving stillness. And I remember being in a lineup one time saying, yes. And I realized my body had shifted to wanting stillness. And that was such a huge difference from a driven, productive person. And it changes. I read this one thing, this African saying that says, don't go too fast. It changes your shape. Isn't that an interesting comment? And that's what's happening is we're changing psychologically, emotionally, physically from this pace, but we have an invitation from God, be still and know that he's God. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you bring in that African proverb because I was relating to everything that you guys are saying, and the Lord started getting a hold of me to just be and not really do anything else, not really. It was actually around between 2014 to 2016. Because before it was a lot of maybe intercession prayer or whatever, a lot of intercession prayer, a lot of other types of prayer. But we were living in Nigeria, and living there can be constant stress, constant cortisol overload. There's just
Fast-paced.
fast-paced, so much different than living in the US. So even being at home, it's like, you know, I had a driver because I couldn't drive in that country, but the drivers are used to just coming in and out of Nigerians' home. That's what they did. They'd come in, ma'am, this, ask that. But for me, it freaked me out. So I remember being in my bedroom, like, where are my kids? Is the driver in the house? What's happening? And I was always on this constant state of just like stress and self-defense and what's going on. And I remember sometimes the Lord would just have me lay in the bed and I could feel his presence come on me. And just like, I didn't think about anything. It was just be with me. It's okay. And it was like this peace would just come over me. Several years later, probably, back in the States, many, many years later, probably maybe 3 years ago or so, I would get these. I would still get this sense sometimes where I could just feel that same feeling I would feel then, and it was like, okay, he's reminding me just to stop and he just wants to be with me. He just wants me just to be still and just be with him. And there was this moment I was having this kind of a crisis moment with someone that I knew pretty close to me. And I was in a lot of intercession for her. And there was this moment we were really concerned, like, do we need to get different people involved? Does she need to go to a hospital? Like, all these different things. And when I woke up in the morning, I could feel the Lord. And he took me to this place, and he was just with me, and he was dancing with me. And this person just happened to show up in this image that I had that he had given me. And it was like, in that image, then he started dancing with her. And he started showing me artwork around the room that he was doing as, he was dancing with her. And when and I was actually awake, I could have gone into that moment of, okay, I got to get up, I got to contact this person, I got to do all these different things, or I need to intercede for what do I need to do to kind of help her in this situation. But no, I just stood there in that place, or laid there in that place. And about maybe 30 minutes, an hour later, and I was up, I was getting ready, and I got a call that she had overdosed on some medication and she was being taken to the hospital, but she had made herself throw it back up. I said, the Lord loves you so much. He brought you in my mind this morning, and I was praying for you, and the Lord loves you so much. And so it was like, for me, it was incorporating being with him, but he was inviting that intercession for her in that moment. And I wasn't necessarily interceding in a way where I was praying for certain things to happen, but it was just, let me just see how you are wanting to love her.
I think that what you've said there expresses a very powerful thought, and that's that the Bible tells us in two places that Jesus living now in heaven, he's interceding for the lost and he's interceding for us, which means that at any given moment, because of the vastness of his mind, his infinite intelligence and knowledge, he can be praying prayers for absolutely everybody, all of it. He can do 8 billion prayers a second. Isn't that something? But here he is praying for us, right? We then decide, I want to pray for Bob. I'm going to pray for Bob. So I think for a minute and I say, okay, Bob needs a new car and Bob needs this or that. So that's what I'm going to pray for. Never once do I say, I wonder what Jesus is praying for Bob right now. Which prayers are going to get answered first? Jesus' prayers for Bob or my prayers that I made up for Bob? So then a good prayer, then good intercession turns into, I need to know what Jesus is praying for Bob right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have established this kind of this deep relationship, this abiding prayer, and I can, in a moment, pause, and out of practice, I can pause what I'm doing, and I can turn inward in a sense, not narcissistically, but I can still quiet my soul and say, Jesus, what are you praying for Bob right now? What do you want me to pray for Bob right now? And then he guides. All of a sudden, we're on the same page with Jesus and his will for Bob, and we're praying in accordance with his will, and the Spirit's involved in that. Which is the better form of intercessory prayer? Prayer that's guided by a relationship with the Lord so that we can hear his thoughts and his voice, or prayer that says, well, I just want good things for Bob, so I'm going to pray for good things for Bob. The more, and this affects our marriages too, the more we can become acquainted with hearing his voice, recognizing it from these times of stillness and these times of abiding, then when there's a crisis relationally, rather than freaking out and simply responding in that moment, we can still quiet our hearts and say, Lord, what do you want to do here? What's your response for this person? Who do you want me to be for them in this moment? When we get a hold of that, whatever action we take is going to have power because it's coming from Pete, not for Pete.